Put yourselves in Nintendo shoes for a second. It's 2003, the GameCube just came out, and you're hot off the release of your new hit Mario game. However, the system isn't doing too hot, and maybe one more hit game could get the console selling. For Nintendo, this game was The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. I have extremely mixed feelings on this game. On one hand, I think the game does some things better than any Zelda game. On the other hand, it has some of the worst pacing I have ever seen in a video game. Is this game worth playing today? Was it even worth playing back then? Would the Space World 2000 concept for a Zelda game have been a better alternative? Grab your batons and jump in your boats. Let's set sail on this review. Let me start by saying, holy man, does this game have personality. Every single character has some kind of mood or vibe to them that makes them unique. But the most obvious of all these characters is Link himself. Link has goals, he has aspirations, he cares for his family. I don't think Link from the N64 games even cared about anyone. Besides the implied friendship with Navi, I never really felt connected to the character. I was more engaged in the adventure itself rather than who I was controlling. Toon Link is the opposite. He's so lovable. He's my favorite Link in the entire series. He's such a goofball, which makes me feel more personally connected to his journey. Also, I love how this game takes the idea of an open world Zelda, but twists it in its own way to make its own thing. It's not trying to be like Ocarina of Time with its open world of Hyrule. Instead, they went for exploring an ocean. A place so vast and expansive that it's captured the curiosity of humans for thousands of years. I honestly can't think of a better way to twist the idea of an open world in a Zelda game. I think Breath of the Wild perfected it, but this was a very unique and awesome way to start. In theory. In execution, it's lackluster. The ocean feels way too big for how slow your ship goes. They fixed this in the HD version, but even with the swift sail, the traversal still feels slow. Sometimes you feel like you're just waiting and there's really nothing else to do. The music is really cool and keeps you engaged for the most part, but after a few playthroughs, it starts to become dull. Another problem with the Wind Waker is that I feel like it starts off really strong, but totally loses momentum by the end and becomes a slog. I think the first 3 temples are the most consistent in quality in any Zelda game of this style. And I was thoroughly enjoying myself at the beginning of the game. I never felt like I was wasting time or doing menial tasks to pad out the game. Unfortunately, that is exactly what the second half of the game was. It's just doing a bunch of dumb, padded out content, which is unfun to play through the first time, and mind-numbingly boring the next. The Triforce Hunt is like the dumbest thing in this entire series. In concept, it's a neat idea going treasure hunting for the Triforce. It makes sense with the pirate theme. But in execution, it is just tedious. It was so bad in the original version, they even tried fixing it in the Wii U version. And it's still so slow and boring. I honestly dread it every time I play the game. It just destroys any momentum the game had before. Which sucks because all the items you get from this quest, from going island to island, seem like they would have been cool in dungeons. But they're just wasted here. They're like, oh, I got this item. Cool, just use it to get this next item. Oh, you got the power gloves. Use it to get these next items. It's just so repetitive and not fun or interesting in the least. This part of the game makes it blatantly obvious that it was rushed. Before this point, the game was perfectly fine. And then it totally runs out of steam by the second half. I think one of the most obvious points of this game being rushed was with the introduction of the Wind Waker itself. It is the most lame, uneventful introduction to a key item in the series. The game is called The Wind Waker. Why is there so little emphasis on the Wind Waker? Remember in Ocarina of Time when there's this intense cutscene which led to the introduction to the Ocarina of Time? Or in Majora's Mask, when the Happy Mask salesman explains the evil, dark backstory of Majora's Mask? Or in Twilight Princess, when the game shows off the Wolf Link form in a cinematic cutscene. Or in Skyward Sword, when the game really emphasizes the sword when you get it for the first time. This is the only game to de-emphasize its key item, and it's so jarring. The boat is like, "Oh, Link, I have this special thing called the Wind Waker. Here, take it," and then it's over with. I may be making a big deal out of this, but I feel like it's really emblematic of how rushed this game is. Back to the second half of the game. It really feels like Nintendo ran out of time, so they had to put these new items just somewhere in the game. So they just threw them together at the end with no rhyme or reason. Not to mention that the Earth Temple may be one of the worst temples of all time. It is such a massive disappointment, going from the high quality temples in the beginning to a visually dull looking temple with extremely repetitive music. I honestly can't think of a single redeemable aspect of this temple. I guess the mirror shield is cool, but that's about it. I would say the Wind Temple is an improvement. It's not the best temple in the game, but it's also not one of the worst, so I'll take it. And then after that, it's really just the end of the game, and I thought to myself, wait a minute, that's it? 5 temples? And no, I'm not counting the Forbidden Fortress as temples. They're pretty much just stealth gauntlets, and the second time you go through it, it's way too quick. I wouldn't even count Ganon's castle as a temple. It's basically just a boss rush mode, and then you fight Puppet Ganon, and then you fight Ganon. The ending of the game is actually pretty cool. People hype up this version of Ganon a lot more because they actually gave him a character with the small amount of dialogue he had. But I wish he had more of a presence. His presence is really felt in Ocarina of Time, and although he's not in Twilight Princess a lot, Zant fills the spot of an intimidating villain being present within the story. In Wind Waker, Ganondorf is just chilling at his castle for the whole game, and you barely even hear of him. He's cool, but I just wanted more of him in the game. As for the gameplay itself, this is easily the best combat we had gotten up until this point. The simple tap of an A button to dodge or do a sword combo honestly makes the combat so much more fun. I love the integration of different items in combat, such as the whip and the hook shot. It really makes it feel more versatile, and the animations also really help too. I really like the unique addition of being able to use your enemy's weapons against them. That was really cool, and I'm glad they took that feature into Breath of the Wild. For the Wii U version, the gyroscope for the bow is very nice, and it's really awesome being able to move while aiming. Also makes a great map. It's honestly perfect for this game, and I feel like a function like this would be sorely missed if there was a version released today. Hot take, I love the visuals of the HD version, and I prefer them to the GameCube, which is a very unpopular opinion, but I actually like the blue and the more vibrant colors seen in the game. And honestly, it looks so good, Nintendo wouldn't even have to do anything to it, considering it already looks like a game that could come off as being released today. Which is crazy, considering the original is over 20 years old, and the remake is over 10 years old. I'm so glad Nintendo went with this art style, instead of doing the art style from the Space World 2000 demo, that everyone went crazy for back then. For those who don't know, people did not like Wind Waker when it came out, because it didn't look hyper-realistic like the Space World demo. In my opinion, if they used the graphics from the Space World demo in a full game, it would be horribly outdated by today's standards. Nintendo honestly made the right call. Obviously, a few years later they would go for that more realistic style. I'm just saying that more realistic art style in 2003 would most likely look dated by today's standards. So, while this game stumbles in many areas, it gave us something that no other Zelda game did. It gave Link a personality. It gave character to the world in a way we hadn't even seen before. And it has the most unique art style I've played in a Nintendo game, or really any game. This game went on to have 2 sequels, which clearly shows Nintendo realizing how good this toon art style was, despite Wind Waker itself not selling very well. I feel like if Nintendo had more time to develop a toon style Zelda game, it could have been one of the best Zelda games ever. Unfortunately, what we're left with is a good but underbaked installment into this franchise. And it just sucks, because I can see an amazing game inside of it that's just hampered by mistake after mistake. And unfortunately, this game wasn't super well received on launch. People really didn't like the art style, and it turned them off. which caused Nintendo to go in a complete opposite direction and ditch any plans they had for Wind Waker 2. And their next Zelda game after Wind Waker they would release might possibly be the most divisive game in the series. Four Swords Adventures! Just kidding, it's Twilight Princess.